who is Frank? I haven't asked myself that question in a while. I've been too busy expressing whoever I am at this moment. I've thought about it though, who I am, and I usually come up with the stock stuff. I'm a son of Italian immigrants from Brooklyn. My age, I have 2 children. But I think you're looking for something deeper than that, and that is, I'll do my best. I'm a person that is interested in achieving peace of mind. I'm a person that relishes in participating in the cycle of love. I'm a person that loves pretty easily. I'm an analytical person. I enjoy being analytical. I enjoy reading. And so I'm a fairly well-read person. I wish I could remember it all. And I'm a person that likes to see the interconnectedness of everything. And with that I get that question very, very often. What was the moment that? Well, in this case, there really wasn't a moment. It was an organically unfolding experience. I knew that, in my heart of hearts, I knew that something needed to shift. I didn't know what that shift looked like. I didn't even know what that meant. I just had this vague fantasy of what that was, what normal, quote unquote, was, right? The great Freud talks about the illusion of what normal is, right? It's so many words. Anyway, so I walk into this restaurant and I was very, very depressed. I was fat. I was isolated, and my nature is to be social. I'm a very social guy. I mean, I'm not an introvert. I am shy about certain things, but I'm not an introvert. But I had become reclusive, and I had become withdrawn, and I felt like I was dying inside. And I walk into this restaurant where there was a breezy openness about it, and everybody was young, and it was a very unthreatening, inviting atmosphere. And for the first time, I felt seen. The irony of being that overweight is that when you're that overweight, I was fat enough to eclipse the sun, but I never felt seen. And with these guys, I sort of felt seen, and I started to get comfortable. So I started frequenting the place, and I frequented it because I felt it was they were like hippies, but they were like these new kind of hippies. They weren't hippies from the 60s. They were these like new age hippies, but they were comfortable and inviting, and I enjoyed the affection that they were sharing with me very, very generously. And at one point, they asked me this question, what's something you want to do before you die? And I said, before I die, I'd like to fall in love one more time. But I don't think it's going to happen because of the way I look and the way I feel. And I think this moved them. And they had already had this idea of making a film. And one day I'm sitting at the table, and Ryland's one of the filmmakers, and he comes to my table. And he says, hey, Frankie, you know that movie, Super Size Me? I said, yeah, that's where that healthy guy eats himself sick. He was supersizing raw food, fast food for a month. He goes, yeah, well, we want to do something similar to that. We want to take a guy who's not well, which was a rather generous assessment for my condition at the time, and feed him raw food for X amount of time, bring him to holistic health practitioners, and do colonics, another thing I didn't know about. I was soon to find out. And we want to take a guy, bring him through all those things, and we want to film it, and we want you to be the guy. And I just said, okay. I didn't think anything of it at all. I didn't think anything of it because it was a young guy, 20-something guy, wants to do a film. Yeah, sure. And I didn't think anything of it. And they were serious. And synchronistically, they didn't have a camera. They never had. I had the most film experience because I had seen the most movies. So of all of them, I had the most film experience. And so a camera fell into our lap, a really good camera, because a guy got a better one, because in photography, it's like this. Photographers and fishermen are very similar. They got to get the new thing, and So this guy got a new camera, sold us this really, for us, was a great camera that for what we could afford. And we made a boom mic out of PVC pipe. And so I signed an agreement that I would do what they said for the next 42 days. And it wasn't an enforceable document. It was a document rooted in integrity and love. Yes, I'll do what you say. We'll try this experiment. And we did. And that was 42 days. And I got introduced to raw food and the vegan lifestyle. I thought vegan was a planet. I didn't know anything about vegan at all. I knew nothing. I thought that was a place that Chekhov was directed to plot a course for by Spock. And I didn't know about wheatgrass. I found out about that, which I didn't particularly care for. But it's sort of, the great thing about libraries is that when you're doing some research and you find certain books that you need to go look up in the stacks, what's really wonderful about the library stacks is that you go look at that particular, you're looking for these 2 volumes, but around those volumes are all of these questions you didn't know to ask, and all of these other realities that exist around that particular subject that you had no idea about. And that was kind of like what it was walking into this place. All these paradigms were accessible. I just was closed-minded about it, and I got introduced to it.
Where I would also like to go is, out of all those experiences that you had, the colonics, the wheatgrass, and all that stuff, what would you say was the biggest thing that was an impact for you, or that you loved, or just something out of that experience that really brought joy to you, or that you just really loved doing?
I love the interaction with everyone, just exploring these new paradigms and these new ways of looking at health and wellness. The part of it that had, I think, one of the most powerful impacts for me were the affirmations, because when I would start to do the affirmation, I would literally feel like convulsing internally, and it felt like such a lie. I felt like if this is a place where this lie is so big, God will definitely come down and personally strike me dead, because the extent of this lie is even too big for him to handle. And what it does, what those affirmations do, is show you where the work is physically too. Because when I would feel something here, because we have a cellular memory, and certainly that's scientifically proven now that we have cellular memory, and actually in the film you can actually witness that, and that was part of what happened to me in the film. But the affirmations were powerful. For me, that was the most powerful experience of the whole 42 days, were the affirmations. Now it's really interesting because it was filmed 5 years ago, but it's only now that we're going out and promoting it the way we're promoting it, and it's gotten so much recognition, and it's like it's sort of, may I be frank, what is it, 2.0? Is that it, 2.0? Is that how they say it? The high-tech thing, in the next level is, yeah, it's sort of like, may I be frank 2.0, because now I've gone through an enormous amount of processing. For example, that question, what's something you want to do now before you die? And I said, fall in love. When I was asked that question, it sounds like a real nice Capra-esque thing, and it really gets everybody warmed up. When I think about it in retrospect, I was coming from a place of need. It wasn't like I was coming from a romantic place. I was coming from a place where something outside of myself was going to fix me. Something outside of myself was going to change the way I feel and felt. And that's where that was coming from. I have a different view on it now.
So if you were asked that question now, what would you like to do before you die? What would you want to do?
I'd like to have more than one thing, first of all. But what's one thing I'd like to do before I die? I would like to do the working class male version of Eat, Pray, Love. That's what I'd like to do, because I think that there's a place for that. and I think I'm just the guy to do it. Sort of a working class, blue collar, son of immigrants, spiritual warrior. As a
Where were you before you started this documentary? Where were you before?
My condition was pretty grave. I was nearly 300 pounds. I was pre-diabetic. I was depressed. My relationships were toxic. I was toxic. I was also on interferon and ribavirin, being treated for hepatitis C. And I was on a host of medications that were either ancillary to that treatment. Oh, they were ancillary to that treatment, and one of them was to deal with the side effects of that treatment. So I was taking drugs that had side effects to deal with other drugs that had, to combat side effects. And so I really, if you would have asked me that question then, I really wouldn't even know where to start, because I was always in a state of confusion. I wasn't sure if what I was feeling was because of the medication or was it causal. I didn't know. What I was doing at the time, I was in grad school. I was taking a full load of courses in San Francisco State University in an MA program. And I was very lost. I was feeling extremely lost and disconnected from everything. And I knew that something had to change, but I felt like I was dying. That my life had become a film noir. The colors were draining out of it. And that was pre-documentary. And the documentary, by the way, did not alter that. The documentary was one step in that journey. The documentary filming took 42 days, and that opened me to other possibilities. And then after the 42 days, I went on another journey that got me to where I am here. Now, what's my vision for the world? I feel like that's like a Miss America question.
No,
Yeah,
seriously,
like
what is your vision?
solve world hunger and bring peace to the Middle East, and and get a lot of endorsements
What's Frank's vision
for
the
Victoria's Secret, and maybe get invited to the Hefner Mansion.
world? What is Frank's vision for the world?
My vision for the world is that great line in Mars Attacks by Jack Nicholson. Why can't we all just get along?
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there are people that will get really long-winded about it. Really, it's just like be nice to each other. Practice kindness. They asked the Dalai Lama what his religion is. His religion is kindness. Just be decent to people, and we know what that means. We don't need any more information. We have all this. Just both Dylan and John Lennon said the same thing. You can't say anything that hasn't been said, or do anything that has been done. That's the technology thing. But really, I think when you come from a heart place, what we've already played it out. You read the Greek, you read the Greek mythologies, for example. Aesop, from Aesop's Fables. Right? I mean, it's like, what is that? It's like 100 BC, right? It's like 2,100 years ago. The guy said, if a man steals a loaf of bread, they'll throw him in prison. If he absconds with the entire bakery, they will elect him to high office. So in certain areas, we haven't changed. We have the information. Now it's about implementing it. And I believe, at the risk of sounding new agey, I believe that we're in the midst of a global shift. I really do. I mean, I went to see AMA yesterday. There were like 2,000 people looking for parking. I mean, it's like wild. And things like that. And there's a lot to do. I mean, it's a lot to do. And we do it a person at a time. And it's not all about, and one of the things about the reason I feel okay about going out there and talking to people, I used to feel like an imposter, because there were aspects of my life that were certain, and still are, of course, that were in disarray. And just take romance and finance, that alone. And if I wait till I'm perfect before I go out and say anything, I'll be dead. There'll be no thing. There are certain aspects of my life that I believe can serve others, And not because I made the next greatest iPhone or the next greatest widget, but because I know what it's like to have a gun to my head, literally, and that moment where you take the gun from your head and you put it on the table and you decide to try something else. And I lived that interval, and I can share that with people. And at one point I thought all of those things were really horrible and shameful, and I would do everything in my power to hide them or to mask them in such a way that it would make them look better than they really were. And what I realized is that all of those travails, all of those journeys, all of those plunges into the dark side, into the heart of darkness, all those experiences are now my greatest assets. I would have never imagined that in a million years. And what I realize is that one of the reasons I like going out and speaking and counseling people, coaching people, which a word I'm not comfortable with, but when I do my private talks with people, every time I do that, a part of me heals. When I share my experience, it validates my existence, because I struggled for a long time just feeling like I had a right to exist, and I hid that with a lot of fluff and stuff. But yeah, it means to me, what I was taught was do something nice every day. Do something nice for somebody every day, and don't get caught. And when I was told that, I was in the beginning of cleaning up my drug and alcohol thing. I was very addicted, and I was a junkie, actually. So I was trying to make it look like, I was a polysubstance abuser. No, I was a dope fiend, and I'm not today. I'm not. And it's interesting how even in the depths of that place, one can be egocentric. So I was like an egomaniac with an inferiority complex. And what I needed to do was really to get humble. And I really was not very humble. I was arrogant in my own self-destructive way. Well, arrogance is always self-destructive anyway. And so I had to be tricked into taking care of myself. And someone gave me that. Do something nice for someone and don't get caught. Because if I do something nice for somebody, I want it above the fold in the New York Times, or in the front cover of Parade. But in practicing that, I start to get in touch with an inner voice that's much more substantial, much more gratifying than the instant recognition that I get and the stroke that my ego gets. And I was out of touch with that internal voice. I was out of touch with that divinity within me. And I was gently coached and coerced into finding the gold inside of myself. And I wasn't ready to go into that mine shaft. I wasn't ready to look at that because I was afraid that either there was nothing but darkness there, or worse than that, nothing at all. And through the love of people that cared about me and that saw something in me that I didn't see, that loved me until I was able to love myself, I was able to maneuver into that place and gain random access to it.
Conscious co-creation means you.
I once saw, what does conscious co-creation, creative conscious co-creation mean to me? I once saw this film, and I don't remember the film. No, it wasn't a film. It was actually, it was a film. And it was these two people, and they were writers. And they both got called to work on a show. And there was a scene where there was a husband and wife, they were in bed. All of a sudden, 3 o'clock in the morning, one of them wakes up. And wakes up the spouse and says, wow, I just had this idea for this film. For this scene. And she gets up and she gets real excited. Next thing you know, they're collaborating, and this electric thing that happens. To me, that's what that means. It means that when we have an individual creativity and an individual genius but there's something magical that happens among a group of people. I personally, I believe that right now, right here, we have the collective genius to take care of every single problem we have on the planet. That Texas-sized plastic island that's floating around in the Pacific, we have the genius to deal with that. That terrible thing that happened in Japan with the nuclear reactor, we have the genius to deal with that. Poverty, we got 10% of the defense budget over the next 5 years, we can eliminate global poverty. We have the resources and the genius that it takes collectively. What we need to figure out is how to get how to collectively associate these people, how to connect them, how to have them working together so that we can do that. Right now, there's a dualistic approach to everything. It's black and white, but Democrat, Republican, Tea Party, liberal. All that stuff serves to separate us. And this is what I think is part of the global shift, is that even among the most adversarial people, contrary to their desires, they're finding connections with people they don't like. And I've learned some of the greatest lessons in my life from people I don't like. What does learn, play, grow mean to me? It means to be alive, to live life to its fullest. That's what it means to me. Have fun. Live life. Be here now. That's what it means. Be alive. Be here. Live, play. What was the other one?
Learn, play, grow.
Yeah. Well, if you don't do those things, you have an empty life, don't you? The unexamined life is not worth living. And sometimes when you examine your life, you can stare at your belly button, and then you got to go out in the sandbox and play. You got to poke your fingers in the mud, or whoever lets you.